Hi, I'm Bob Tabor with Developer University, and I welcome you to this course covering the fundamentals of the Visual Basic Programming Language. And we're going to talk about programming topics in general. This is designed specifically for absolute beginners to programming. Now, if you're already an experienced software developer coming from another software development platform or programming language, then frankly, this series of lessons might move much too slowly for you. You might be better served finding another resource to use as a starting point, one that has you, the experienced beginner, to Visual Basic in mind. Microsoft Virtual Academy has many great courses designed for people at all skill levels, so I recommend that you start your search for the level of course that's right for you at Microsoft Virtual Academy. However, if you are completely new to programming and you're new to the Visual Basic programming language and you're new to building applications on the Windows platform, then this perhaps is the best place for you to start. Not only will you and I work together to learn the syntax of Visual Basic, but I'm going to take the time to walk through everything that we do together. One other quick caveat before we get started here. This flavor of Visual Basic is not for creating macros in Excel or other Microsoft Office tools. That's actually an entirely different tool called Visual Basic for Applications, or VBA. Yes, Visual Basic and Visual Basic for Applications will look similar in some ways, but what you can do with them is extremely different. So if automating Microsoft Office applications is your end goal, then I strongly recommend that you research on Microsoft Virtual Academy for courses related to Visual Basic for Applications, or VBA. I'm sure you'll find what you're looking for there. But assuming that you know that you want to work in Visual Basic proper and build .NET applications, then you're in the right place. I'll explain what we're doing, but more importantly, I'm going to explain why we're doing it, the thought process behind what we're doing. I'm going to try to anticipate the questions that you might have, anticipate the problems that you might run into as you're typing your very first lines of code into the code editor in Visual Studio, or as you're working through some of the exercises that we're going to work through together. Now, I've literally taught hundreds of thousands of people Visual Basic over the past 14 years. That's actually no exaggeration. This includes children as young as 8 years old and as young as 80 years old. From virtually every corner of the world, they've all learned from a version of the very course that you're watching right now, a previous version of this course, and I know that you can use this course to learn too. In fact, this is the 6th iteration of this course that I'm teaching, dating all the way back to 2005. And over the years, I've incorporated the feedback from thousands of students, feedback and suggestions on how to improve the course, and I've incorporated those in the effort of putting forth the very best course that I possibly could to help you get started and get your feet wet in Visual Basic. So I only make one real assumption as we begin this course, and that's that you already have some version and edition of Visual Studio installed on your local computer and that you're ready to write your very first lines of code. So if you don't already have Visual Studio installed, then please, by all means, visit visualstudio.com, where you're going to learn about many of the free and commercial versions of Visual Studio that are available and what the differences are. Now, personally, in this course, and what I use when I'm not recording videos, is the Visual Studio 2015 Community Edition. It's one of the free versions that you'll find on visualstudio.com. You can see it in this particular version of their website right here with this green button. You can get started downloading Community 2015. But I want to emphasize that you can use any edition and any version of Visual Basic with the lessons that I'm going to teach. There might be tiny user interface differences between what you see on my screen and what you see on your screen. However, I think you're going to find that as you work through the videos, there's really no difference difference in the language itself. I'm not going to be focusing on any of the specific features of Visual Studio, so hopefully that won't prevent you from following along no matter what. Now, there will be other courses on Microsoft Virtual Academy that will demonstrate the power of Visual Studio proper, all the features that Visual Studio has to offer, how you can improve your workflow with Visual Studio, videos that explain the differences between the various versions and editions, but I'm not going to focus on that in this course. I'm going to focus specifically on the basics of the Visual Basic Programming language itself. And what I want to demonstrate will be true no matter which version or edition of Visual Basic that you choose to use. And that's great news, because as long as there's a Visual Basic, these lessons should still be valid and useful no matter what. Now, to get the best or the most out of this or any course that you'll find online, you should become what I call an active learner. That takes several different forms. First of all, you should attempt to follow along as closely as possible and do what I'm doing in the video inside your own copy of Visual Studio. I call this getting your hands dirty in the code, actually writing the code that I'm writing on screen. You're writing it, I'm writing it, we're working together to actually work through these lessons. There's no better way to learn to code than to actually write the code yourself, not just watch the video on screen. It's like suggesting that somebody learn how to play guitar, but only by watching videos, not by actually holding a guitar in their own hands and strumming the chords. And if I were to say, well, here, I'm going to teach you guitar, but don't touch the guitar, you'd say, well, that's virtually impossible. The same is true with code to some extent. You want to build muscle memory by typing in the code on your own. Typing in the code yourself will give you insights that merely watching the video will not give you. So do this. Pause the video, rewind the video, rewatch portions of the videos if you need to. I'm going to make the code available that I type in. You'll be able to download it from wherever you're currently streaming this video on Microsoft Virtual Academy. And you should only use that to compare the code that I wrote versus the code that you wrote, not to just open the code up and run it and see what I wrote. Write it yourself. That's important. You should be typing everything in your own copy of Visual Studio running on your own local desktop or laptop. Also, don't feel compelled to rush through this course. If something doesn't make sense, again, pause the video, rewind the video, rewatch those portions that don't make sense at first, because after rewatching them and seeing the nuances or understanding, hearing me more completely might help unlock things in your mind. Sometimes a second or third viewing, focusing specifically on what's going around the screen, in all the corners of the screen, and on the words that I'm actually saying can help a lot. So being an active learner also means that you're taking control of the learning process. So if I say something or do something that really doesn't make sense, then by all means, find a second or a third resource online that can help you out. Maybe it's an article out on msdn.microsoft.com, or maybe it's other videos on Channel 9 or Microsoft Virtual Academy. But life has more than one teacher. So if something I say doesn't make complete sense to you and you need to hear it from somebody else, by all means, find some additional resources that can help you. Make sure you search out those resources that resonate well for you personally. Now, if you're interested in a more comprehensive version of this course, except for the C# programming language, well, that's something that I can help you out with on my own website, devview.com, at www.devview.com. I have a course that spans 30 hours that has coding challenges, 30 hours of video instruction, also quizzes and cheat sheets and a lot more. So please visit me at devview.com. You're also going to find many other interesting training courses on my website that I've created specifically to help you become a professional software developer someday. So if that's what your goal is, then maybe I can help. And then furthermore, over time, as we go through this course and as I begin to field some questions about it online, I might add some additional study resources and additional free content available for you here on this website. So make sure that you visit frequently. And like I said earlier, if you're new to programming, this is a resource that can help. help you out. I'm really excited for you if you are just getting started. Learning to write applications is one of my life's passions. It's extremely gratifying to breathe life into your imagination and to watch your creations actually come to life and watch other people actually then using your applications. And Visual Basic holds a special place in my heart. I learned the basic programming language when I was 12 years old. That's like 34 years ago, okay? And I did it on my very first computer, a Commodore 64. Then after college, I found Visual Basic, and I realized that I already knew the language part, and the visual part was really easy to pick up. It was one of the first applications of its kind that allowed you to visually design forms on screen by dragging and dropping components from a toolbox onto a form designer. Now, the basic language is actually an acronym for, as you can see here on Wikipedia, Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. It's a more human-readable programming language than other programming languages, but that readability, that human readability, comes at a price. It's a little bit more verbose, meaning that you have to use more keystrokes to build your code instructions. Some other programming languages like C# require that you type in less instructions to accomplish the same thing. And primarily for this reason, some professional software developers prefer other languages like C# over Visual Basic. However, there's virtually no difference between applications that are created using C# and applications that are created using Visual Basic, because they both end up creating a .NET assembly whenever you compile your source code that you wrote into an executable, or rather a .NET assembly. Now, I'll explain the technical details around that a little bit later in this course, but if you're just learning to code, in my opinion, go ahead, use whatever tool that helps you understand the concepts and helps you get your feet wet in software development. Later on, you can graduate to other languages because, frankly, many of the concepts that you learn in Visual Basic, they're going to transfer almost directly over to C#, and there's very little that you'll have to learn additionally in order to make that transition. It'll just be shortened forms of some things, okay? So as you're getting started, you're embarking on a really exciting journey that's immersive, and it's personally and professionally rewarding. And best of all, I know you can do this. Again, I've seen so many people start off where you are right now, assuming that you're just getting started. And they've worked through the lessons, and they've worked nights and weekends to teach themselves how to code, and now they're working professionally writing code for a living or building real applications that are being sold in apps like in app stores like the Windows Store. So if you've ever gotten stuck in the past trying to learn how to program, I promise that if you put the time in and you put the effort in and you work along with me, as you and I work together, we're going to build your knowledge of Visual Basic, and you'll be well equipped to take on more advanced tutorials after this course. You can even learn how to build web applications and Windows applications, Windows Store applications, so apps that can be sold in the Windows Store. You can learn how to create cloud services and video games, and even applications that run on iOS and Android, all using simply Visual Basic. So, again, assuming that you have some version and edition of Visual Studio already installed on your local computer and you're ready to go, then we're going to begin in the very next lesson writing Visual Basic. And I hope you're excited, because hopefully you can tell I am. I'm really excited to get started. This is so much fun. So let's go ahead and get started together, and I'll see you there in that next lesson. Thank you.